depending on whether or not you've watched any of my other recent videos, you may or may not know that I no longer have the Alpha LITE yoke. I sent it back. Basically that's due to dissatisfaction with its overall performance, and particularly the pitch action. And of course it's difficult to definitively say whether the experience of using one particular sample of the yoke is representative of the brand, but having said that, I think we can have some confidence in the uniformity of the production given the tolerances that are required for a precision, relative precision instrument such as this. So I stand by what I've said about the pitch action. Although with very few hands-on reviews out there to date, it's difficult to know what other people's experiences are. Now, as you'll have seen, I've hypothesised that there may be some internal differences between this yoke and the original Alpha. It's important to say we have no clear evidence for this, and it's just as likely that component changes, such as the evident change of A to D converters, they could very easily be down to the availability of components changing over time. You know, since COVID, we all know there's been supply chain issues with components. And one other interesting, not to mention very welcome, piece of new information, certainly to me, is that the onboard calibration is available and is accessible in the LITE yoke as well as the original Alpha. And as I predicted, the way that we must access that and go through it is only slightly different. So essentially you hold down 3 of the buttons while plugging in the USB connector, and then you go through the steps required to mark, as before, 8 different positions of the yoke. The surprising part, and quite innovative part, is because we don't have the LED illumination on the front panel, there's no obvious way to get confirmation that you've marked each of those positions. However, the innovative part is if you run the Windows calibration screen, that's your indicator. So as you mark each step, instead of seeing LEDs flash on the front panel, you'll see button 8 on the Windows calibration screen flash briefly. Now unfortunately, since I don't have the yoke, I can't actually try this out to see if there's any wrinkles in practice, but I think we can be fairly confident that if you go through the steps correctly, you get a successful calibration. And of course, to my knowledge, if you do it incorrectly, all you have to do is redo the steps and you should be good to go. So this restores my confidence that this yoke internally may well be pretty much the same as the original Alpha yoke, with the caveat that in my experience the mechanical operation of the pitch action still appears quite different, and notably in the force required to operate the pitch action, but more importantly what I've described as a notching. I hesitate to use the word notching, I've used the word detent as well, but you know, it's effectively a notch or a detent. And to me the only really credible explanation I can come up with for that is the construction of the bungees themselves, and notably the fact that we've got bungees with a synthetic woven sheath around them. Now this is something I've made 2 separate videos about that you can go and look at for the detail, but to summarise those here, I've measured in some detail the relationship between the force required to pull the yoke back or push it forward for a given displacement, and pretty convincingly discovered that we have 2 independent zones. There's a very short zone of travel around the centre, about 1.5 centimetres around the central position, is stiffer, and when you pull it or push it past that zone or out of that zone, unexpectedly the action becomes softer, or it's easier to push or pull, and so we get a step effectively in the feel of the pitch action. And what I think is really significant is it's not a step up, it's a step down, and that causes you to over control as you're pulling it off that step. If that doesn't make sense, go and watch the detailed descriptions in my other videos, but for me that was the deal breaker. You know, I did quite a lot of testing of flying this around, and to me it just wasn't really, on balance, something I could live with for the kind of flying I do. Your mileage may vary, so I don't want you to let me put you off purchasing this yoke. You know, in other respects it's a very capable piece of equipment, and at the price point, you know, under £200, there isn't much that can touch it.